What's up, everybody? Welcome to Adventure Awaits. I am here with Ernie, and we are driving to Buffalo, New York, to the Theodore Roosevelt inaugurational site, which is now a museum. I've never actually been here. My friend Lois apparently worked here for a day handing out flyers or something of that like, and Ernie seems to know where it is, I hope, and we're on our way, so here we go.
Hope so. Well, hello, we're on the road to adventure.
Ernie was telling me about Teddy Roosevelt and what it was like for him growing up.
I don't claim to be a historian, but
No, we didn't say you were.
but it's my understanding that as a young child, Theodore Roosevelt, although of well-to-do family, was very sickly, and that he worked hard to overcome that by indulging in rigorous activities, doing things in the outdoors, building up his strength, and otherwise became more interested in conservation and things that he's famous for since then.
That's cool. I never knew anything like that about Teddy Roosevelt. Incidentally, people, I did once play a Roosevelt-esque character in Arsenic and Old Place once, about maybe 9 or 10 years ago. And I wasn't actually playing Roosevelt, I was playing Teddy Brewster, who thought he was Teddy Roosevelt. Here's a picture of it. So there you go, that's what I looked like back then. We are here at the Theodore Roosevelt inaugurational site, which is now a museum, and we are here with Kelly. Hello, Kelly.
Hi, well, welcome. Thank you for coming. So my name's Kelly. I'll be taking you through the house today. We're actually going to get started right over here with a photo of this house on September 14th of 1901. This is the day that Theodore Roosevelt becomes president. Now, it's important to note that Roosevelt is from New York State, but he never actually lives in Buffalo. When he comes here, he's just a guest. And this house actually belongs to the Wilcox family, whose pictures you see right over here. So Mr. Wilcox and Mr. Roosevelt are actually old friends. They both served on a land commission back in the 1880s that helped set up Niagara Falls as New York's first state park. And the two of them became friends from that point on. So when Roosevelt comes to Buffalo after President William McKinley is assassinated here, he's invited to stay with the Wilcoxes. And that's how he ends up taking his oath of office here as well. So we're going to move right over here, and you're going to get a little bit more introductory info from President Roosevelt himself. He'll tell you a bit more about his life and career, and the unusual circumstances that led to him becoming president.
All right.
Hello! Welcome to the Theodore Roosevelt Inaugural National Historic Site in Buffalo, New York. This was the home of my friend, Ansley Wilcox. We've been friends for many years, dating to my time as a young member of the New York General Assembly, when I advocated civil service reform, the creation of Niagara Falls State Park, and other progressive ideas in which Mr. Wilcox and I had mutual sympathies. I would go on to serve the people of New York and the country as United States Civil Service Commissioner, as a member of the New York City Board of Police Commissioners and its president, as Assistant Secretary of the Navy, and in 1900 I was joined to the re-election ticket of President McKinley. I'd been the governor of New York, elected in 1898, and desiring to be re-elected in 1900 to another 2-year term. But I'd been fighting for the square deal and against corruption in the Empire State. The New York bosses decided to send me away to a place from which a man might never be heard from again, the vice presidency of the United States. Vice President Hobart having died in office during McKinley's first term, I was added to his second term ticket. We were elected. And as part of my early duties, I came here to Buffalo to participate in the opening ceremonies of the Pan-American Exposition. People of the world had their gaze upon Buffalo, and visitors from throughout the world and throughout the country came here. In September, President McKinley and Mrs. McKinley would visit Buffalo. On September 6th, seeing the beautiful Niagara Falls, and later in the day, making a speech and greeting visitors. One of those visitors was a cowardly assassin who shot the president. Word came to me that day that the president had been shot in Buffalo. I was about to address a fish and game dinner at Isle de Mott in Lake Champlain, Vermont. I raced by train to Buffalo. After some days, the president's physicians assured me and the members of the cabinet gathered here that the president would recuperate from his wounds. It was thought that it would do the nation's anxiety and Wall Street's anxiety some good if I was seen to go on a planned vacation with my family in our beloved Adirondack Mountains. I was climbing Mount Marcy and coming down from the climb, having lunch, when word came that President McKinley was thought to be dying. I raced by horse and buggy and eventually by train to be here in Buffalo. Along the way, I was informed that President McKinley had died at 2:15 that morning. Coming here to the home of my friend, Mr. Wilcox, eventually the inauguration would be held here. I would take the oath of office as your 26th president right here in this building that would eventually become the Theodore Roosevelt Inaugural National Historic Site. And so I hope your visit here today will inspire you to take up your fair share of the duties of being a good citizen. And I hope you go forward from your visit inspired to be a good citizen, to do your duty, to make this country a better place for your having been here. So enjoy your visit and bully.
Okay, so now we're going to head on to the grounds of the Pan American Exposition. So this is the big World's Fair Buffalo is hosting in 1901. Now the Pan Am actually lasts for about 6 months, starts in May, runs until November, and it brings visitors to Buffalo from all over. Now the Pan Am is all about celebrating American industry and different world cultures, but it's especially focused on celebrating a growing friendship between North and South American countries, which is where we get the name Pan American from. So I'll give you a few minutes to look around in here, and then we'll keep going with the tour.
All right, thanks.
No problem.
Now this is extremely cool. Like this old carnival machine. It's wow. And over here too is something similar. Of course you can't touch things now, but wow. Very cool to see all these artifacts from the Pan American Exposition. And just so much history here. See, now I'm pretty much looking at things that I don't know the significance of, but if any of you can help me out with that who happen to be watching, tell me what some of these things might be. I just know what looks cool, basically. An awesome old school picture of Buffalo, that panoramic picture of Buffalo in the 1900s. Steel industry was still booming. We were still something special. Of course, what we're most known for, displayed right there. With beauty so fleeting. And when we focus, you'll see the key to the Temple of Music. The Temple of Music, the assassination that Theodore Roosevelt was just talking about. This is where it all went down. In the Temple of Music at the Pan American Exposition.
Any questions before I keep going?
I saw there a key to the Temple of Music, and it reminded me of a museum that is in Buffalo, I think, that pays tribute to the exposition and also artifacts from the assassination attempt on
The Buffalo History Museum does have a lot of stuff relating to Pan American. They have, I think, the biggest collection that I know of.
And I remember seeing on a site called Roadside America, there was an article about Buffalo, about the entrance to that museum at the time, which was a recreation of the Dreamland sculpture, the Victorian woman with her eyes closed. And that was the entrance to that museum at the time. I think it was torn down in 2014.
These types of fairs were pretty common events during this time, and a lot of them followed the same sort of neoclassical architectural style. Images like that were pretty common.
Cool.
Okay, so you feel free to grab a seat on the bench. We're going to watch another video on that screen right behind you.
Okay.
A lot of our visitors wonder why we're hosting such a big event like the Pan American here in Buffalo. And the answer is that in 1901, this is the 8th largest city in America. And we're also one of the biggest and busiest ports because we're located on the western end of the Erie Canal. So all the shipping traffic that comes from the Great Lakes has to go through Buffalo on its way out to the Atlantic Ocean and New York City. So Buffalo really booms because of this trade. We're also located right by Niagara Falls, and it's around this time we've learned how to use the falls as a source of hydroelectric power. So energy from Niagara Falls becomes electricity that powers hundreds of thousands of light bulbs that cover all the Pan Am buildings. And people have seen electricity before, but they've never seen so many lights in one place or in so many different colors. They've started to call this the Rainbow City. September of 1901 brings President William McKinley here to Buffalo to visit the Pan American, and he'll actually be shaking hands with the public.
Whether you hail from Buffalo or Bogota, Peoria or Peking, you have to admit, it's a marvelous century we've just begun. Today, President McKinley joins us in celebrating America's progress made visible at the start of the 20th century. Here at Buffalo's Pan American Exposition, you're privileged to witness a multitude of modern miracles. America is the most advanced nation on our spinning planet. Our scientists and inventors have given us innovations from the Acousticon to the X-ray. They've even brought us soap that can float. And following in Mr. Edison's noble footsteps, motion picture engineers have perfected his mutoscope. Here at the Pan American Exposition, we have 200,000 bulbs connected by 42 miles of wire. So stick around till after sunset. The effect is magical. Let us never forget the genius of our captains of industry. They have made us all richer, not just in our wallets, but in our lives. They have spun a web of glittering iron rails from coast to coast, and these rails carry goods to build the nation and fill our department stores. Andrew Carnegie started off as a humble bobbin boy. He's now one of the richest men in America. Now that's a clear reminder that everyone has a chance at success in our land of plenty. Today, America stands taller than ever before the world. Other peoples and nations have their virtues, but we are preeminent among them. We have driven old world relic Spain from our doorstep. And as victors with honor, we have welcomed the noble red man, natives of this new world, into our vital society.
Our merchandise and our moral might circle the planet from Puerto Rico to the Philippines and even China. And the peoples of all the world are seeking a better life here. In the last decade, more than 3.5 million immigrants have landed on our sacred shores. Their brains and their brawn will make America even stronger. With gold in the Klondike, oil beneath the Texas turf, limitless wood, coal, and water power. Mother Nature has blessed us, and we shall never run out of resources. All indications are that tomorrow will be even better than today. Our popular President William McKinley and his heroic Vice President Theodore Roosevelt are poised to lead America's charge into the future. The President has stated that this marvelous fair is a timekeeper of progress, and today he will greet the public in the Temple of Music.
Shot twice by an assassin. He's rushed to a hospital on the grounds of the fair, and doctors operate on him as soon as they can. Now, they feel very optimistic. They believe President McKinley is going to be able to make a full recovery, and even though they weren't able to remove both of the bullets that entered his body, they think that he's going to be all right. Now, Vice President Roosevelt rushes to Buffalo as soon as he gets the news about the shooting, but he's reassured that everything looks really great, and we believe the president will make a full recovery. So Roosevelt is reassured, and he continues on with his planned family camping trip up in the Adirondack Mountains. Just a few days later, though, Roosevelt gets the news that President McKinley has taken a turn for the worse. And it's while Roosevelt is on his way back to Buffalo that he gets the news that President McKinley has died just after 2 o'clock in the morning on September 14th of 1901. Roosevelt himself doesn't get here until about 1 o'clock that same afternoon, and he's picked up at the train station by his old friend Ansley Wilcox, who owned this house. Then Mr. Wilcox and Mr. Roosevelt are going to come back here and have a small lunch before they go on with their important business for the day. So we will go just around the corner into the Wilcox's dining room. Do you have any questions?
No.
Okay. So we're heading now into the Wilcox's dining room. So Roosevelt is here with Mr. Wilcox and a few members of the president's cabinet. They're supposed to be having lunch, but Roosevelt's not really interested in eating. He's mostly just been drinking a lot of coffee and pacing the room. Now, all the newspapers are talking about is President McKinley's death, and the cabinet is asking Vice President Roosevelt if he will take his oath of office and officially become the president. But Roosevelt isn't sure he should do this just yet. First, he thinks it's only proper that he should pay his respects to the late president's widow, Mrs. Ida McKinley. So Roosevelt decides he wants to pay her a visit before he takes his own oath of office. Now, she's actually staying at another private home, only about a mile down the road from here, and so Roosevelt is going to get in a carriage and he'll head down the street to visit her. Do you have any questions?
No.
Okay, so we'll continue on down the hallway. So we're going to head into this room right here, and you can grab a seat wherever you would like. So right at the turn of the 20th century, the United States has been going through a lot of changes, and is facing a lot of problems that the country hasn't really dealt with before. Now, Roosevelt is a man who's always thought he might run for president someday, but he never expected it would happen quite like this. At this moment, he's only 42. He's about to become the youngest president ever inaugurated. And of course, the country is still in shock after President McKinley's death. So while Roosevelt is traveling down the street to visit Mrs. McKinley, we're going to try to get inside his head and think about some of the issues that Roosevelt might have been thinking about during this pivotal moment in his life, just hours before he's about to become the president.
Mr. Roosevelt, there are some things I should like to discuss with you before...
Senator Hammond, excuse me, but I need a few moments by myself to think about a number of matters before the swearing in.
But of course.
It is a dreadful thing to come into the presidency this way, but it would be a far worse thing to be morbid about it. Here is the task, and I've got to do it to the best of my ability. I am truly grateful that our economy is a mighty one. For that, all honor must be paid to the architects of our material prosperity, to the great captains of industry. Andrew Carnegie, he of the golden touch, has said, "Wealth passing through the hands of the few can be made a much more potent force for the elevation of our race than if it had been distributed in small sums to the people themselves. But often, those sums are indeed miserably small." John Mitchell, who leads the Mine Workers Union, is eloquent about that fact.
In Pennsylvania mines, wages were so low that parents were compelled to take their boys from school, sometimes when they were less than 10 years of age, and put them to work in the breakers and the mines.
A man who visited a breaker wrote that the dust penetrates the utmost recesses of the boys' lungs. A kind of slave driver stands over the boys, prodding or kicking them into obedience.
Get back to work. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm 12 years old. Been working since I was 8. Can't read none. Want to go to school, but I can't. Because I've been working all the time.
I must work to curb the might of the giant industrial and financial trusts. While they do enormous good, they have much power over the lives and spirits of hard-working Americans.
The good we secure for ourselves is precarious and uncertain, until it is secured for all of us and incorporated into our common life.
Jane Addams, a great reformer, knows that there are districts where hardly anyone is above the level of poverty. Where poverty means misery, it must be met by organization and the endless labor of those who live in the midst of it, like Miss Addams. When I was police commissioner in New York, I used to walk the poorest neighborhoods with the photographer Jacob Reese. I will never forget what we saw together.
An unscrupulous contractor regards no basement as too dark, no stable loft too foul, no rear shanty too provisional, and no tenement room too small for his workroom.
And what of the poor immigrants? Hundreds of thousands each year. Francis Walker is president of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and he thinks immigration should be restricted. He said, "The entrance of vast masses of peasantry, degraded below our utmost conceptions, is a matter which no intelligent patriot can look upon without apprehension and alarm."
I could not bring much with me. We had a suitcase, but what was in the suitcase? I didn't bring a toy. We had no money for toys.
I welcome every honest immigrant, no matter from what country he comes, provided only that he leaves off his former nationality and becomes an American, desirous of fulfilling in good faith the duties of American citizenship. Even here, in our own country, race is such a vexing problem. I fought beside the colored 9th Cavalry at San Juan Hill, and I hold that if a man is good enough to be put up and shot at, then he is good enough for me to do what I can to get him a square deal. Among the men of this race, I much admire Dr. Booker T. Washington, president of Tuskegee Institute.
No race can prosper till it learns that there is as much dignity in tilling a field as in writing a poem.
We shall never have harmony between the races until the views of men such as Senator Ben Tillman are transformed. After all, he said, "We of the South have never recognized the Negro to be the equal of the white man. And we will not submit to his gratifying his lust on our wives and daughters without lynching him."
One man cannot hold another man down in the ditch without remaining down in the ditch with him.
The only wise and honorable and Christian thing to do is to treat each black man and each white man strictly on his merits as a man.
I have learned that success is to be measured not so much by the position that one has reached in life as by the obstacles which he has had to overcome.
Soon, this very day in fact, I shall invite Dr. Washington to the White House.
God has cared for these trees, saved them from drought, disease, avalanches, and 1,000 tempests and floods. But he cannot save them from fools.
John Muir may be our foremost naturalist, but he does not speak the whole truth. We have become great because of the lavish use of our resources. But what will happen when our forests are gone? When the coal, the iron, the oil, and the gas are exhausted? When the soils have still further impoverished and washed into the streams?
If only one of our grand trees on the Sierra were reserved, it would not be long before you'd find a lumberman and a lawyer at the foot of it, eagerly proving by every law, terrestrial and celestial, that the tree must come down.
Like all Americans, I like big things. Big prairies, big forests, mountains. We have fallen heirs to the most glorious heritage a people ever received. We can continue to preserve them in but one possible way: by making the proper use of them. If we are to be a really great people, we must strive in good faith to play a great part in the world. Our whole national history has been one of expansion. We won the recent war against Spain in a very short time, and Secretary Elihu Root, to whom President McKinley entrusted the War Department, has already shown himself as good a man as ever held the portfolio.
The American soldier is as stern a foe as ever man saw on the battlefield. He is the advanced guard of liberty and justice, of law and order, and peace and happiness.
A prominent Democrat said recently, "Governments derive their just powers not from superior force, but from the consent of the governed." But I say, it is only the warlike power of a civilized people that can give peace to the world. And so, we are now guardians over Cuba, Guam, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines.
The people of the ceded islands have acquired a moral right to be treated by the United States in accordance with the underlying principles of justice and freedom which we have declared in our Constitution.
Above all, let us shrink from no strife within or without the nation, provided we are certain that the strife is justified. For it is only through strife that we shall ultimately win the goal of true national greatness. So, what do I believe? Simply this: It is vital that every man who is in politics should strive steadily for reform, that he should have the highest ideals. And now, I must return to take the oath. I'm going to be president. And I'm going to do my utmost to give the country a good president.
So Roosevelt heads down the road to visit Mrs. McKinley. But when he gets to the home where she's staying, he actually ends up being turned away. Mrs. McKinley is still grieving very heavily over the death of her husband, so she's just not able to see any visitors today. Now, Roosevelt is asked once again by the cabinet if he'll take his oath of office. And this time he agrees, but it's decided that he should come back here to the Wilcox home to do it. So Roosevelt's going to take his oath of office right across the hallway in the library of the house. Now, the room's going to be packed with nearly 50 people here to witness the event, and the front lawn of the home is actually full of reporters who just couldn't fit inside the house. So we're going to come out into the hallway now. Did you have any questions?
Was Roosevelt concerned for his own safety during this time?
Not particularly, not from everything I've ever heard.
Okay.
At this point, there's a big fear generally throughout the country that there might be another attack against the government, whether it be Roosevelt or a public building or another public figure. But I've never read anything about Roosevelt himself being particularly concerned. At this point, presidential security is basically non-existent.
Right.
It's nothing at all like what we're used to seeing nowadays. But yeah, at this point, he basically just kind of wanted to get everything back to normal, reassure the public, reassure the economy, that everything would be okay. So before we head into the library, we're actually going to watch a quick reenactment of Roosevelt's inauguration. Now, by 1901, inaugurations are already big public events like we're used to seeing nowadays. But of course, Roosevelt's inauguration hasn't been planned for weeks and months ahead of time. It has to be put together very quickly, and the ceremony itself is pretty short. So this will give you an idea of just what Roosevelt's inauguration would have looked like.
The crowd assembling in the library to witness the ceremony included cabinet members, politicians, community leaders, reporters, and members of the Wilcox family. At exactly 3:32 p.m., Secretary of War Elihu Root approached the Vice President.
Mr. Vice President, I have been requested by the cabinet of the late president, at least those who are present in Buffalo, all except two, to request that for reasons of weight affecting the affairs of government, that you proceed to take the constitutional oath of President of the United States.
Okay, so now we'll head into the library right over here, which is where the inauguration actually took place. So you can follow me. So Roosevelt takes his office standing right in front of that bay window, just about where we now have this small circular table. And he's surrounded by members of the cabinet, as well as prominent people from Buffalo, including the Wilcoxes, of course. So Roosevelt is sworn into office by a federal district court judge here in the Western District of New York, and he actually has to borrow the suit that he wears for his inauguration. He doesn't have any formal clothing with him. He'd come straight from a camping trip, but he's lucky that he and Mr. Wilcox are just about the same size. And it's Mr. Wilcox himself who's later heard to say that it takes less in the way of ceremony to make a president in this country than a king in England or any monarchy. But the significance of the event is no less great. After Roosevelt has been officially sworn in as president, he's actually going to hold his first cabinet meeting in this room as well. He wants to ask all the different cabinet secretaries if they'll keep serving in his new administration. He thinks it would be a good show of faith to the American people if he keeps all the same men in charge of the government. He wants to reassure everyone again that the government's stable and everything will be just fine after the assassination. Because there's a big fear that there's going to be more anarchist attacks against the government. Do you have any questions before we keep moving?
No.
Okay. So Roosevelt gets sworn in here in the afternoon of September 14th. And then we have one more room we're going to look at here on the ground floor, and then we'll head upstairs. So this room is typically used by Mr. Wilcox as his home office. But while Roosevelt is here, they tell him to use anything in the home he might need. So this becomes Roosevelt's office for the very first days of his presidency. They actually set up a special telegraph line just for President Roosevelt because he's getting so many messages coming in from all over the country. Now, on the evening of his inauguration, Roosevelt is going to sit down here at Mr. Wilcox's desk, and he's going to get to work. So we'll take a quick look at some of the things he writes on this very first evening of his presidency. So here on the handwritten side, you see a draft of Roosevelt's first presidential proclamation. This is basically his first public statement to Americans as their president. It's going to be published in newspapers all across the country. And you'll see that Roosevelt makes a lot of edits to this piece. He wants to make sure he gets the wording just right, because he wants to make a good impression on the American people. He's only been vice president for about 6 months at this point, and a lot of Americans just don't know very much about him. They don't know what to expect from a Roosevelt presidency. They don't really know what type of man he is, let alone what type of president he will be. So in this statement, Roosevelt's basically promising he'll keep doing everything the McKinley administration has been doing, and it creates a day of national mourning for the late president. Now, Roosevelt doesn't really end up doing anything that he promises he'll do in this statement. He ends up changing things up quite a bit from McKinley's policies. But in this moment, he's just trying to reassure Americans that everything will be okay after the assassination. Now, another item that Roosevelt writes on this evening of September 14th, just after becoming president, is the typed letter you'll see on the opposite side of your paper. So this is a letter to Dr. Booker T. Washington of the Tuskegee Institute down in Alabama. At this point, Roosevelt had actually been writing to Booker T. Washington for a while, and he'd been planning to make a trip down to Tuskegee. But as he writes in this letter, he won't be able to make that trip anytime soon. His presidential duties are going to keep him in Washington for quite some time, and so instead Roosevelt decides to invite Booker T. Washington to have a meeting with him at the White House. They actually have a few meetings, and at one point Roosevelt invites Dr. Washington to stay and have dinner with him at the White House. And when the public finds out about this dinner the next day, it's a really big deal. There's a big backlash. Roosevelt even receives some death threats just because he ate dinner with a black man, and Booker T. Washington is the first person of color to dine at the White House. Now, despite all the threats and the backlash that Roosevelt receives, we know that he personally thought very highly of Booker T. Washington as a man and respected him quite a lot. He wrote this letter within hours of becoming president, and he wrote this letter personally, where a lot of his correspondence is handled by secretaries just because he writes to so many people. So this shows us that Roosevelt obviously valued his relationship with Booker T. Washington and thought pretty highly of him. Now, Roosevelt becomes a president on a Saturday afternoon, so with the next day being a Sunday, he's not going to travel. He'll stay here in Buffalo and he'll attend church services. The following day, Monday the 16th, he's going to head back to Washington along with McKinley's funeral train, and from there he'll begin helping the country recover from the third presidential assassination in just 36 years. So for a lot of Americans, this could easily be the third president they had seen assassinated just within their lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's hard to wrap your head around.
Yeah.
Do you have any photos or any questions while you're down here?
No.
Okay, so we're going to head up to the second floor now.
Okay.
Are stairs okay? We do have an elevator.
No, stairs are fine.
Okay.
I can hold on to this?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's yours to keep.
Okay.
Take it home if you'd like, or we do have recycling at the front desk if you're all done with it. So we will head up to the second floor. These exhibits are going to be a bit more self-guided, so I'll give you some info and then leave you to look around at your own pace.
Okay.
So these exhibits look at Roosevelt's entire presidency, which lasts for about 7.5 years from 1901 until early 1909. So we will get started right in here. So this is a recreation of Roosevelt's White House office. You'll notice it's not an oval. At this point, the Oval Office hasn't been built yet. Now we have a few different interactive exhibits in here for you to check out. So at the globe right next to you, you can explore what's going on around the world during Roosevelt's time in office and how he helped shape America's foreign affairs. Then at the screen on the wall behind you, you can hear some more from people of Roosevelt's day, and they'll tell you how he dealt with different social and political issues throughout his entire time in office. What is usually everyone's favorite exhibit is to have a seat here at the president's desk. You could try out being president for a day. It's really fun. I recommend it highly. And then for any of the touch screens, we have these little cups you can use to just grab, these little pens you can use. You grab a clean one from the green cup and then just drop it in the red when you're all done. And there are a few more exhibits to read out in the hallway whenever you're all set in here. Whenever you're done up on the second floor here, you could just head down the hallway and to your left. It'll take you to another staircase and the elevator. They'll both take you back down to the visitor's center.
Okay.
Do you have any questions?
No.
Okay. So thank you for coming to visit us today. Feel free to take your time looking around and let us know if I can help you with anything else.
All right. Thank you very much,
No
Kelly.
problem. Thanks for coming.
Thanks. All right, so here we have the President for a Day exhibit. And it's an interactive thing, as Kelly was saying. And it says to type in my last name with this typewriter here. Okay, there'll be 2 M's. Okay, my name will be Mitch. And we continue over here. It says Agriculture Appropriations Bill 1907. And we have to decide if we pass this or not. Should we sign an agricultural appropriations bill? Sure, why not? Give it to them. It's not. Okay. Signature. Well, my signature is invisible ink, apparently. Yeah, we're signing it. President Itch. In the Hepburn Act of 1906. Oh, geez, so many acts. Sure, let's sign it. President Mitch. And that's, yeah. It's pretty much signing these acts, which is actually pretty cool. And this whole room is just, it is just very cool. The entire feel of this place is actually very well done and really gives an authenticity of the time period. So let's see what's going on here. We're going to touch the screen. Let's hear from Elihu Root.
President Roosevelt's famous phrase, speak softly and carry a big stick, pretty well sums up his foreign policy. Of course, he could speak loudly when he had money to improve world trade and allow our Navy to reach the Pacific quickly. The president was determined to build a canal across Central America. Well, to secure a route across Panama, which was ruled by Colombia, the president simply encouraged Panamanian secession. Immediately recognized Panama's independence and quickly acquired rights to his canal zone. Soon, construction workers were digging their way from the Atlantic to the Pacific in the most colossal engineering feat of the day. In 1904, he announced a policy that became known as the Roosevelt Corollary to the Monroe Doctrine. It stated that we would not allow European nations to intervene in the economic affairs of Latin America. But, of course, the U.S. was allowed to do just that. President Roosevelt wasn't always belligerent. He could also be a peacemaker. Near the end of his first term, Russia and Japan were fighting a brutal war. Roosevelt arranged for a peace conference in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. I worked closely with him there, and we ended up hammering out a treaty. For this, the president was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. This treaty was not the president's only peacemaking masterstroke. When he organized the Algeciras Conference in 1906, he reaffirmed his conviction that nations should use mediation, not war, to resolve disputes. Of course, in his last year in office, he sent the Navy's Great White Fleet on a global voyage. It was really a chance to show off the Navy's mighty new battleships.
And here on this globe, you can see how Theodore Roosevelt helped shape the modern world. So we'll click on an area here. Ah, straight to massacres. Awesome. I've never heard of this particular massacre, the Kishinev massacre. Sure, it was bloody and terrible, and that's why it's in a museum. Of course, we have the mustachioed man himself, looking quite dapper. Very pensive look as he stands by the window and contemplates something of great importance. Here we have a display of some interesting news of the day. 30 Russian orphans are ordered deported. And here it says, the entrance of the orphans into the country was something entirely new to the immigration authorities. They naturally thought that the only thing they could do was to deport the children. They must have felt shaky about taking any other course. Their order to have the children deported will be undoubtedly canceled by the authorities at Washington when the facts are shown to them. We have found temporary shelter for them for this purpose. After that, we will send them to their future homes. Kind of sad about the Russian orphans. And here we see how it relates to what's going on now. At this time, Russian orphans were deported. And in 2017, Iraqis were being deported. Makes you wonder if we're ever going to progress, doesn't it? Preacher held as alien. Although this looks like a headline from Weekly World News, I'm sure it doesn't mean what it says. Held as an alien. Again, involving deportations and sending people away. And then subsequently you have over here where Airbnb says they will be curbing racist hosts from their website. That was then. This is now. I like this one because this one actually shows progress. Now, no one's here to tell me about this room, but looks to be a sitting room of some kind. With, oh boy. And these rooms are just beautiful, man. And look at the molding on the ceiling. They don't even do this in homes anymore. All right, all. This concludes our tour of the Theodore Roosevelt inaugurational site. I hope you all had a great time. I had a great time doing this one. I really like the way this one turned out. So come see me on my next one. Until then, keep on adventuring.